Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
My name is Justin Arner. I'm the guest.
Oh, you introduced yourself.
I did. Sorry.
That's very awkward. But
Sorry.
Justin's back.
I love it.
We are talking.
I listen to this podcast, guys, and I know how it's done. So I'm just trying to get in step.
You're just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be talking about Star Wars, the newest Star Wars film, the end to the supposed end to the Skywalker saga. Put the supposed in the wrong spot, and so we're talking about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And I just wanted to ask you guys before we got like really deep, especially into any kind of like spoilers or anything, like how did you like the film in a general sense? Just give me your elevator pitch of how you liked it.
Well, in the sense that it was the first Star Wars film that I took my 5-year-old son to. He sat next to me. I got him all sugared up on Coke and chocolate and everything. He was squirming the whole movie, but he liked it. I was kind of seeing it through his eyes. Other than that, I have a couple things I liked about it, but not many.
All right.
Well, I kind of had the experience that Justin had with The Last Jedi. If I remember correctly, Justin saw The Last Jedi and did not like it. Then went back a second time and kind of rode the roller coaster and just kind of accepted it for what it was, and he had a much more enjoyable time. Not that he didn't accept it for what it was the first time, but he liked it better the second time. Then before we did the podcast, you saw it a third time and you were like, nope, not into it. So although I've only seen it twice, Rise of Skywalker, I kind of had that same experience. Maybe the adrenaline of seeing it the first time and seeing these characters and the end of their stories and some of the plot lines coming to an end and some of the solutions and answers to questions that we've had for 4 or 5 years now coming to an end. Some of the cinematography, the epic battles, being attached to those characters, I kind of loved it. I cried, I laughed, I cheered at the end. I was happy to see it. Then I went and saw it 5 days later on Christmas Day for a second time. And maybe it was Christmas and I was tired and my belly was full from Christmas dinner. I almost fell asleep in the first 20 minutes.
Ooh.
That might not have anything to do with the film.
Okay.
Well, it might not have anything to do with the film.
But it might have.
It might have, and that's my point. The second time I saw it, now granted, I spent 4 or 5 days on film Twitter following people's hatred of this film and their, really bad idea. And I read all the reviews, which I never do before we do a podcast, but for whatever reason, I was trying to figure out why everybody was having such a hard time with this film. And maybe that got into me and maybe I started seeing it through those eyes. But the second time I saw it, I was like, yep, that's a problem. Yep, that's an issue. Yep, I see where people are coming from with that. But ultimately, it was, even a second time, a cathartic experience. The ending is epic and I liked what they did. And I clapped with everybody else the second time I saw it. But I do have some issues with it.
Well, you haven't heard my opinion yet, so I was very similar to you, Paul, where I watched it the first time with my in-laws and Steph, and came out of it being like, okay. I mean, I think I even texted you saying that I saw it, and then you said, so you've seen Star Wars, what do you think? And my one-line retort was, it's like Thanos. It's inevitable. Like, there was really no other way that I feel like they could have ended this, especially once I knew that Palpatine was involved. And I feel like they kind of story-wise backed into this as opposed to, pushed forward into something new. And so, but at the same time, watching it, I saw it a second time with Steph this past weekend, and there were scenes that I just absolutely loved. And it's not even scenes. It's not even like we start the scene here and we end the scene here. It's just like images and groups of images that were beautiful and sometimes fan servicey, but then other times just like well shot and just effective, and kind of like what we've talked about in the past of like, there's images that mean a lot to a Star Wars fan or to someone who knows something about Star Wars, but like maybe my in-laws who haven't seen Star Wars for 20 years or whatever might not get that same feeling out of it. Like for me, as an example, it's very early on in the film, no spoilers or anything. There's, I guess, somewhat spoilers, but there's a bunch of big ships that come out of the water, and I'm being very vague, and I'm playing it down a lot, but it was like, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because I was like, this is insane. We've never seen this many Star Destroyers at one time. And I was like, this is crazy. So, and also that was kind of the beginning of the film, and I didn't know what was going to happen as the rest of the film went on. And so there were certain scenes like that, similar to that were spine tingling. So I think it's kind of a little bit of both for me. And I did similar things. I didn't go on film Twitter because I knew what that was going to be like, but I did dig deep into a lot of the backstories behind some of the things that they used, and then some of the things that they, made up that didn't have any backstories. So, do you guys want to get into spoilers? It's very early on.
Yes, can we please do that?
Yeah.
Yes, we have to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, because it makes me nervous, because I'm always the one who says something that I'm not supposed to say.
Oh, I'm definitely going to.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, go see it in the theater. It's an epic ride. It's worth seeing in the theater. Okay, we can say anything we want now. Good?
Yep.
Yay.
Okay, what was your biggest problem with this, Paul, with this movie?
Well, I don't really understand the term fan service when it comes to a film like this, because I like what you said about it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Because that was a point I was going to make too. How do you end this film? So I probably will spend the rest of the podcast defending the film. Because when I actually wrote notes, because Justin was going to be here. I never write notes, Justin. But
I'm sorry. I have such a reputation. I'm so sorry.
No, it's a good thing. Trust me, because I don't want to lose my train of thought. And also sometimes I do. Like if you listen to our Marriage Story podcast, it's like, get your thoughts together, Paul. Anyway, the point to that is that if not this film, then how would you end it? Keeps coming up to me. Like I keep coming to that question. How would you end it? So I don't know if I necessarily have major problems with it. How do you not connect her to somebody? How do you not have a lightsaber for her at the end? How do you not see the Jedi ghost? How do you not do that? I do think there are some very visible, not plot issues, but like when she destroys the ship, when she goes back to the island, how does she get off the island? How does Kylo Ren get off that water island that they had that big epic Death Star battle? How does he get back? I mean, these are all stupid things that can be answered very easily with some kind of like, well, he just radioed whoever, but they're not in the film. And it does add to kind of a continuity thing that I had issues with. So I don't really have major things, because it's just like small minor things that I wish that would have happened instead of other things happening.
So you're okay with Palpatine's granddaughter?
Yes, because, and that's one of the first things that I wrote, I believe that everything that we can discuss that will be an issue in this film has a precedence in other Star Wars films. We don't, and this is how I was thinking about it. What if we saw 7, 8, 9 for the first time? We had never experienced a Star Wars film or any of these worlds. We would never question the things that happen that we question in these films, because we wouldn't have a history with them. We wouldn't have a personal stake in these characters. All of these things that people keep saying, well, where was Palpatine? He came out of nowhere. Well, what happened with Snoke? Was he a clone? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. Darth Vader comes out of nowhere in the first film. Well, episode 4. We don't have a backstory to him, but we accepted that. The Emperor comes out of nowhere in all 4, 5, and 6, and we accepted that without any issues. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I needed them to connect Rey somehow. And if that's what they had to do it, it made sense to me. So I hope you get my point. Like, if we were seeing this for the first time, there would be no question about, well, what happened to him? Didn't he die in Return of the Jedi? Wasn't he thrown over? Well, wasn't Darth Maul dead? He showed up in Solo. So any bets are off when it comes to regeneration in this world. So I didn't question it, because I thought it was kind of cool. And I loved the whole Sith planet and the whole Sith cult and the whole all that chanting and weird stuff that they were doing is spooky as hell. And then it made sense to me that she would have the power that she has because she's related to him. And a lot of people are like, well, we don't know. When did he have sex? When did he have a son? When did he have a daughter? When did he have time to have this? We don't have any of those questions from 4, 5, or 6 when we're watching them the first time. So it's not a necessity for me to have all of those things answered.
Well, I'm going to somewhat piggyback on that and say, because I've been trying to like kind of codify some of my thoughts in this. And I think that one of the biggest things that I come back to is thinking about Star Wars in the first 3 movies that were made, episodes 4, 5, and 6. And, I think that, mystery and unexplained history or lore kind of make that trilogy more interesting and intriguing. Because you're right, Paul, there's a lot of questions that aren't answered, that they're just assumed that everyone else in this world that we're watching knows something about or, has a backstory. But then at the same time, we're now to the point where there's such an established mythology with the Star Wars films that it's causing particular moviegoers to go back and constantly check back with what they believe is possible and isn't possible in this galaxy. I do it, and I know other people do it. And so it's different than other pop culture mythologies like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Those are things that were created by one person and done in pretty much a linear fashion, beginning to end, and all finished before people in movies who spend billions of dollars making movies started monkeying around with them. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all of those. But that then you can go back to that and say like, no, this doesn't jive with the book, or this doesn't jive with the source material. There is no source material with the stuff we're working with here. So we're in some kind of uncharted territory.
Okay, so Palpatine. The reason that he's a problem for me is because this is a villain. This is a problem that we thought was solved at the end of Return of the Jedi. The last time we saw Palpatine, he exploded. Okay? So if he comes back, that's cool. But show me. Don't have it in the crawl and say that he's back all of a sudden. And then when I saw that crawl, I thought it was really cool because it said, I think the first words of it were, "The dead speak." Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, that is bold. That is a new direction. I love to see Star Wars surprise me and do new things. So I was like on board. And then Kylo Ren is going to town in this awesome battle sequence.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. I don't know what he's doing, but I am down with it, man. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to this awesome stinking planet that's like, it's like Dark Souls, which is a video game with a very, very specific atmosphere. And I was 100%. You immediately see those clones of Snoke, and I'm like, there's a huge question answered right off the bat. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so good. The pacing of it was like, bam, bam, bam. And so I was expecting to have an answer to the question because I thought it was solved. Where did Palpatine come from? We don't need to know Palpatine's origin. When we saw Palpatine in Empire Strikes Back is when we first saw him. Mm-hmm. You don't need to know where he's from. He's just, he's this evil. He's the epitome of evil. He's the guy that turned Anakin he's the guy that turned Darth Vader into Darth Vader. And that's totally cool. That's really all you need to know about him. He serves his purpose. Mm-hmm. And then he died. And Vader sacrificed himself to kill him. Yep. All of a sudden, off screen, he's brought back. And we don't know how. We don't know who did it. But he's the main villain. And it feels like it's pulled out of left field at the 11th hour. We need a bad guy everybody can agree on. Let's bring him back.
I have a big theory about that as far as like the original trilogy. You have to bring in Palpatine because there has to be hope that Darth Vader's not the bad guy. In the first movie, Darth Vader's the bad guy. Mm-hmm. But in the second movie, since we find out that Darth Vader is
somebody
Luke's
badder.
father,
right?
You have to be like, there has got to be some sort of hope for Darth Vader to be, to be saved, or for Darth Vader to be redeemed. And so there has to be another bad guy to fight against, or at least for, Luke and Darth Vader to possibly fight against at some point. Now, it didn't happen in Empire, but it did happen in Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
Similarly, we're in a situation with Kylo Ren that is exactly the same situation. At the end of Last Jedi, Kylo Ren's ticked, but if you're going to land this plane, he can't, if you're going to land this plane in this similar way that you landed Return of the Jedi, he can't be the bad guy. Right. Who is the only bad? I mean, you could come up with Darth Galanius. And,
I love Darth Galanius.
And, you could fight him in the last movie, but nobody knows Darth Galanius. So,
I do. I know him.
You should look him up on Wikipedia.
I'm making the entry right now.
Okay. So I think that's one other reason why they backed into Palpatine is because
but it feels so backed into. It just feels wrong to bring back somebody for no good reason. Give me a good reason, and I'm down.
Okay, you got a point, Justin. I get what you're saying. So what you're saying is it's what Josh and I are always talking about one good line that can just explain
100%.
The whole 2 hours movie. So what you're saying is somewhere during the whole mechanical mechanism that brings him down, that's really cool looking, even though it's crazy sinister and ugly and gross, and he's grosser than he's ever been. All you needed was when they brought me back, you needed something to say that there's a reason or how he came back.
But it's also more than that, because they've had 2 movies now to foreshadow. The Emperor said, I've been pulling the strings the whole time. And you're like, I was like, wait a minute. This has not been foreshadowed that I can remember, obviously, at all.
Yeah, okay. But how do you explain Snoke then? How do you explain Snoke? Because he's nobody when we meet him in
Force Awakens.
Well, at the end,
I can't explain him because the Emperor said, what was the purpose of Snoke? Why couldn't it have just been the Emperor? Why did he have to hide behind these
proxy?
puppets?
It was his proxy because he didn't feel like there was anybody powerful enough. I think but
just like Vader,
you don't know. What was his purpose? And he's got a bunch of clones. He's just got a bunch of spares lying around. Why couldn't he reveal himself at that time? Why did he need to hide in the shadows until the final movie? It doesn't feel earned.
Maybe because Rey wasn't ready. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe Rey wasn't ready. But because he realized that Kylo can't do what he needs to do to be the thing.
It's not explained. And again, and now I will say, Paul, you've seen it twice, and Josh has seen it twice, and I was going to see it twice, but I was really bummed out after the first time I saw it. I was really bummed. And I was like,
that's fair.
I don't think I was going to take my wife back to see it because I see it through her eyes, and I kind of introduced her to Star Wars, and she loves them. She turned me around on The Last Jedi when I saw it. And I do have some thoughts about The Last Jedi that I'm going to get to, but because I've become a convert, but only because of this movie. But I didn't see it a second time, and I should have. So, that's my caveat. And maybe I would pick up on some things that I missed, and maybe you guys can correct me. But I have only seen it once.
Will you see it a second time, though? Will you watch it again?
I absolutely will, because Jessica hasn't seen it yet, and I will watch it. I just didn't feel like, I don't know. It really.
Have you seen any Star Wars anything since you saw that movie?
I have not. I have washed my hands of it. This is not gonna. This was a knee-jerk reaction, I admit, but I stopped The Mandalorian. I was like on episode 6 or something of The Mandalorian, and I was like, I don't feel like watching this anymore. I wanted to play the new Jedi video game for PlayStation. Don't want to play that right now. Again, this is emotional. This is an abusive Star Wars relationship.
Yeah, you want a break.
I want a break. I'm Jedi'd out. I'm like, this movie just felt disrespectful to fans like me, and I just
that's
wanted
interesting.
I'm sorry. I know that's extreme, but I just felt disrespected. In many ways.
I tell Josh this all the time. You're allowed to have your reaction. It is valid. If that was your emotional reaction, and even though it's strong and it seems to be where you're cutting off a world that you love, that's okay. That's an emotional reaction to something. You're allowed to. That was kind of my point in the beginning, that we're emotionally connected to these films in a way that we can't separate ourselves when we see something new. And when things aren't answered, just like they weren't answered in 4, 5, and 6, we want an answer now because we're emotionally connected to it. So let me clarify just really quick, because I think I completely understand what you're saying, Justin. You're saying that even if he had said, while I was regenerating, I had Snoke take my place, something like that would have solved this problem for you.
I don't know if it would have solved it. I would have liked to have seen some foreshadowing even from The Force Awakens, and then a little bit more in Return of the Jedi. I don't know how you do that, but just a sprinkling of something, some other evil in the background, more evil than Snoke, more evil than Kylo Ren.
So remember in 4, 5, and 6, when you find out Vader's his father and that Leia's his sister, do you think all that was planned out?
No.
That 4, 5, and 6 were meant to play? No, they weren't, because they kiss, right? So everybody thinks that that's weird because they weren't brother and sister. And then they added that later on, there's another. Okay, so what you're saying is that you don't think Palpatine was planned when they started doing 7, 8, 9, and because of whatever reason, they decided to go ahead and add him to the 9th and final chapter, which makes sense that they would bring him back on some level. So you're saying none of that was planned, and they kind of like painted themselves into a corner, because she does have a lot of power that's unexplainable. She does have a background that doesn't have an explanation. There are things that happen that don't have explanations, that Palpatine being there the whole entire time does make it make sense. But you're saying that nothing is there to connect those dots.
I think that, now this comes back to The Last Jedi. I think The Last Jedi brought up some cool concepts. It had something to say. It had themes. The idea of Rey's parents was settled in my mind, because Kylo Ren flat out tells her they were nobody. So, and she believed him. You could see that was such an awesome, that was a very well acted scene. You want to talk about breathing
after
life.
their huge, their huge battle with each other.
Right. And then they have this moment where he tells her that her parents are nobody, and you can see it in her eyes that she knows it to be true. And that's what gave that scene depth and emotion. And instead of, and that's not the only thing that The Last Jedi brought up that was completely trampled upon by this Rise of Skywalker movie. Instead of taking those ideas and themes, now The Last Jedi did not get some things right. I think it was flawed in some pretty major ways, but at least it had some themes, and it was trying to set up the answers to some of these questions. And instead of building on it, they went back, they took 2 steps back, burned down a lot of the things that The Last Jedi was trying to do, and brought in the Emperor. Let's bring in the safe villain that everybody can agree on. And let's just make Rey his granddaughter. I don't know, his granddaughter. We can't make her related to Luke or Leia, right? It just feels like it was made by a committee. It feels rushed. And
it was rushed.
And it was rushed.
They had 2 years. They started over with no script.
And so that's
2 years before right now.
When Disney bought this franchise, they couldn't sit down and write 3 movies, at least the skeleton, the outline. It's of these 3 movies. It's like they didn't know where they were going until we got here. And it's like, oh crap, we got to do something because we got a lot of pressure on us now. It feels like it was made by a committee, and it feels like it was made by reading Reddit and and like catering to the loudest critics of The Last Jedi.
I think this is where we need to bring in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because there is, you can see that there is some sort of there was a hand on these first, whatever they are, 22 films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that was Kevin Feige and his group of like 5 people at Marvel Studios. And I understand that there's like a Jedi Brain Trust and all of that, whatever they call them, the Lucasfilm story group and they're supposed to be the ones that like you should be able to ask them any question, they'll have an answer for you, and it is canon. And so I think that's, first of all, that's an amazing job, because like, dang, I mean, you can like feed your family with that. But secondly, I think that it's there is a situation where you can have too many cooks in the kitchen, and I think in this one, it seemed like when Lucasfilm was bought, they put Kathleen Kennedy at the front of this, and she had the best of intentions. And I think she was probably on the side of the artists. And at some point, she or somebody must have given them enough pushback to say, like, you gotta, I keep saying it, land this plane. Like, you gotta land this plane. The crazy part is, why did Rian Johnson get like complete carte blanche with the whole thing? And I mean, that's the anomaly. Like, all these other things, Rogue One had issues. The whole end of it got reshot by a totally different director. They replaced the, Lord Miller in Solo with another safe director. The Benioff guys, those guys are out. I mean, there's all of these things, like all the way down the line were issues. And obviously Colin Trevorrow was supposed to direct this movie, and that's why there was a compressed time schedule. So they started over with 2 years left, and holding The Last Jedi in their hand, and then they have to
it's like the problem child.
Yeah, and then they brought back the same guy who was purposefully said, like, that's not the way I would have gone. I would not have gone that direction, and then they bring him back, and then he recorrected. The good thing is he did keep some stuff. The Force transference stuff is amazing in this movie. I loved it. You didn't like it?
No, it's not that. I just don't necessarily 100% agree with them. My nephew, Jacob, he listens to our podcast and has for the last 2 or 3 years. He texted me, Rise of Skywalker fixed everything that was wrong with The Last Jedi. I don't necessarily agree with that, because one, I don't think there's as much wrong with The Last Jedi as most people do. But I just don't think that there is a necessity to fix things when really that was an all-encompassing film by itself. There were things that, and you're saying that the things that were answered in The Last Jedi should have been left alone, like her being Force sensitive just because. I'm not so sure I agree with that, because she's way more than just Force sensitive. Like, Finn feels her and senses it and wants to tell her before they get swallowed up in the sand pit, which I love the fact that they almost died in a sand pit, because that was like the 70s and my childhood.
That's what I thought too. But I talked to multiple people, Justin, one of them, who think that he wanted to tell her that he loved her. Now, why would
I don't know what he wanted to say, and because why would he tell her that he's Force sensitive
when they're about to die?
That those are the last moments that they're going to have. What the heck difference would that make?
Is it like,
seems
hey,
more,
me too? Like, it does seem a little weird. Like, hey, I'm Force sensitive too.
And just because, did J.J. Abrams say that was what he was going to say? Is that why everybody thinks that?
I don't. Where did you get that from, Paul? Is that what you felt?
Were you feeling the Force?
I just don't. Yeah, I just don't think that. It seems like cheeseball for him to say, Ray, I just want to let you know I love you, because that seems just as silly to say at that very last minute that you're going to die.
100%.
I mean, that's such a movie moment. But why didn't he say it before? Why hasn't he said it since? Why does he have to be attracted to her? Why do they have to have a relationship? Why does it have to be a thing?
He
why
already
can't they just
had
be
a
buddies?
relationship with the woman that he completely ignored for the entire movie. And who was completely sidelined.
Yeah, 100% I stand with you on that one. That one I stand with. That one is sidelined and does not make sense. If they were going to sideline that relationship, then you needed to mention it at least once, and or give her something or give her something more to do. That's the only one I agree with. I do want to go back to one point though, about, oh gosh, I forgot now. I can't remember it. I'll think about it. But no, I don't think he was going to say I love you. I think he was going to say he was Force sensitive, because he is just discovering it. And I don't know why it would be the last thing. Why does anybody say the last thing that they say before they die?
That he's Force sensitive?
No, I don't think so. I think he's discovering it.
But why doesn't he tell Poe?
And what evidence, what foreshadowing have we seen of that at all?
We see
up to that point.
When the boy grabs the broom. No,
I know,
that
but
people
Finn
can be Force sensitive.
Force sensitivity.
what
In this film, you do see it
he tries.
3 times.
I know, but up to that point,
we don't know that Leia is Force accessible until she actually uses it. In one of the weakest scenes in that movie, I'll give you that. Yeah. It is a flaw.
They call back to that.
We never see her use the Force.
Though.
We never.
How?
Yeah, they do. They do. They make up for it in this movie.
No, I mean when Rey. But I'm just saying they call back to that particular scene when Rey is at the edge of the Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
and she jumps out. To get into
the
Millennium Falcon.
Jordan
she flies.
Move.
She doesn't stick her tongue out, but she flies.
She did. I saw it.
Oh, okay, fine.
You did
but
not.
Yeah, so that's a callback. See, that's where I mean, a lot of people are saying that like they undid everything that was in this film. They did that was in Last Jedi. They didn't. They cherry picked what they wanted to use. And they did. Now, the things that they did roll back were huge. And possibly inexcusable to go from a second film to a third film of a trilogy to do that.
My point to everything is going to be, but there's a precedence for almost all of these so-called mistakes because they kiss each other. And they never call back to that. They never say, ooh, I kissed my sister. Ooh, I kissed my brother. And they never call back to it. It's just assumed that it never happened or what they're thinking. There's a lot of things that in this world, in this universe over the last 40 plus years that really don't have any questions, but we've accepted them because we were new to it. Now that we have, and I'm not saying that this is an excuse for everything, but we have a vested interest in it and we have opinions about what we think these characters should be and develop into and all that other stuff. So how do you go on with Rey's story? You just ignore the fact that she's so sensitive and she's so Force able. You just go on with that. You don't try to explain that in the final film. You don't give it an explanation. You just move on with it. You
build on to what The Last Jedi said when Kylo Ren said that we're going to burn it all down. Sith, Jedi, everything. And then you saw that scene of the kids and they were Force sensitive and it was like, it really spiritualized the Force and made it something like mysterious again.
I think that we as fans of Star Wars started getting so focused on the Jedi and the Sith, and we started forgetting that it's the Force.
Exactly.
It's
Luke even says the Force does not belong to the Jedi. It does not belong to the Sith. It's everybody's. And it demonstrated that. I mean, for all its flaws, I'll say it again, The Last Jedi had some awesome ideas that could have been built upon instead of burn down. They burn down the best parts. It don't make Rey just have to be related to somebody. The Force doesn't care who you are. Mm-hmm. The Force is everyone's, and you don't have to be related. And then it's like, oh nope, you got to be related to somebody. You do,
but so we should be able to accept Luke as just somebody who is a young adult, way past the age of being trained as a Jedi, of just being Force able and Force sensitive, and then he can go on to do the things that he does. But they don't do that. They add in the fact that the biggest villain is his father. So there is kind of a precedence for this. So yeah, and I'm saying that, and then you go back and you find the history out. So I hear what you're saying. I guess it just didn't bother me as much as it has most other people. And don't get me wrong. Everything that you guys are saying is everything that I've read, and I understand it. I just have an ability to take myself away from what I'm actually watching and think about it as if that's the first time I've ever seen something. And I made that point in the beginning of the podcast that if we were just watching this in the beginning, we wouldn't have any of these questions, even if I wouldn't necessarily go ahead and say that they burned down the stuff from The Last Jedi. I get why you're saying that, but I think they added to what they needed to add to. And other than the relationship with Finn and
Rose.
Oh my God, I can't even think of her name right now.
You've forgotten her already.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. That's so bad. I loved her in Last Jedi. I just saw it again and I cry every time I see her and she talks about her sister. I love it. I just think that other than that subplot, there's really nothing that the Star Wars films haven't done before that they don't do in Rise that doesn't explain it just like they have in the past.
Well, let's for a minute then. Can we think of Luke Skywalker? Okay, in The Last Jedi, the last time we saw him, he had secluded himself, cut himself off from the Force, and he said, "What do you want me to do? You want me to go, stand down the First Order with my laser sword. I'm not going to do that.
But that's exactly what he did do.
That's exactly what he did. But he did it in a way
on his terms.
On exactly. And he sacrificed himself. That's why, I mean, The Last Jedi, it really was. It had themes. It was trying. It was batting for the fences about mythology and heroes and sacrifice and hope. And then in this movie, Luke Skywalker shows up. He says, the first thing he says is, "Don't you ever throw your lightsaber." So he's going back on what he did in The Last Jedi. And then he literally says, "I was wrong to do what I did in The Last Jedi."
He also, and in The Last Jedi, he said, "I was wrong." Also, like he said, "I was wrong to seclude myself," once he gets on board in The Last Jedi. So he's saying I was wrong twice in two separate instances, but at the same time, but the reason why, I mean, the Yoda discussion with Luke is the key, is that, because Yoda says, you need, don't just teach them what you know and the good things that you know, teach them the things that you did wrong and have them learn from your mistakes. And that's why, and he says something to the effect of like, the learner is always gonna benefit from the master, that kind of a thing. So I think that, and by the way, the Jedi suck. Like they're dumb. Like the Sith are dumber, but the Jedi are pretty dumb. Like they allowed Darth Sidious to just kind of like steamroll this. I just watched all 9 movies in the last 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh,
so,
you're a better man than I.
Well, I hadn't seen the prequels in like 15 years. So
how do they hold up?
No comment. They just they just allow Darth Sidious to steamroll, governments and everyone.
And Luke acknowledges that.
Oh yeah,
in The Last Jedi, which was cool.
Exactly. But what I think hopefully the saving grace of the issues of this film are that hopefully the Jedi are done and there's a new thing, and maybe it's going to be Skywalker. Maybe it's going to be, because it's the rise of Skywalker. Maybe it's going to be like, I'm a Skywalker, you're a Skywalker, they're a Skywalker. We're all Skywalkers. Come on down to my Skywalker ranch and
You're so silly. You're so silly, man.
But what I mean,
don't make me laugh at things.
What I mean
don't
is
make
like,
me laugh at things like that.
They're trying to. Hopefully, they're going to move away from this Jedi.
Well, that's
whatever.
what I was hoping they were going to do in The Last Jedi when Adam Driver says, "Burn it all down. The Jedi, the Sith, everybody. Let's do our own thing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is setting up something really cool."
But he's trying to go the dark side way.
And
what ends up happening
her.
is it only will work if they go the light. That's the only way they can be an effective team, and we do get to see that at the end of this film. And it's a really cool scene at the end. Yes, he does beat up the Knights of Ren, which I don't know whether
those are his homeboys.
Well, that is cool, but
we don't know anything about them.
Exactly, and
we don't see them interact at all.
Nope.
They look like a bunch of
they didn't have
cosplayers, like in a Taco Bell parking lot, and
So what about his shattered helmet? Because I was trying to like think of a reason to bring the helmet back, other than like it looks freaking cool. And the only thing I could think of is like if he's like hanging out with the Knights of Ren, he's gonna look funny if he doesn't have a helmet. So he's probably like, I really need this chimpanzee to fix my helmet.
They need to sell 2 toys of Kylo Ren, one with the helmet and one without the helmet. That's what it is. They got to bring it back. I mean, The Last Jedi, he shattered the helmet.
Yeah.
And then they're putting it back
Goodness.
together in this one. They are putting
my
back
children,
together.
my children, my children.
Tell us why we're wrong.
Now. As your elder, I'm just going to call out the cynical card on this one. Come on now. I mean, yeah, you're probably right on some level, but my point is that do we constantly need justifications for everything that's cool that's happening in Star Wars? I'm not so sure. And I wanted to say that I remembered something. Kylo Ren could have very easily lied to Rey about her parentage, just like Obi-Wan lied to Luke about his father. So there's a precedence for it. So would we have accepted that fact if these are the first 3 and only films we had seen at this point? Back to my original thesis, because just like we accept now that Darth Vader is his father and Obi-Wan sort of lied.
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view.
Just like, yeah, from a certain point of view. But from a certain point of view, Kylo Ren, who is the bad guy at the point, wants her, at this point in the film, wants her to join to burn it all down, which is, no lack of irony because the actual Jedi temple burns down and the big tree burns down and all that other stuff. Is he telling her the truth because... What's that?
Is it all the books are still available? So I didn't. That was one weird thing about Last Jedi.
Right, but you don't see a scene of that, right? But you accept the fact that they got saved.
Yeah.
Why is that acceptable?
Well, I don't think
we wanted them to
she
be
was
saved.
reading from the books in the Rise of Skywalker.
Had she taken them?
Yeah, she somehow found
before the tree got burned.
Yeah, well, you didn't see it, but she did.
She must have taken them between the time she was in the tree with him,
and then she's reading from them in the Rise of Skywalker.
Well, do you see them at the end of Last Jedi?
Right,
she sticks them underneath her.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
yeah, when they open that drawer. But that's my point, though. That's the point, though. You don't really know anything about how they got saved. Aren't you happy they got saved, though? As an audience member, do you really need to know who saved
But Yoda said they weren't important.
Books?
Yeah. Yet
No.
They are? They're really important?
Yeah.
Why is Yoda lying to us now? I trust that guy.
Well, but
he's dumb.
Wait a second, though, Justin.
He let Darth Sidious rise.
True.
Aren't you glad that they saved him, though? Regardless of how important they are to the storyline, when you saw that cabinet open and her in this film seeing her read
but I was
from
just
them,
told that they were not important. Like Yoda literally said, "There's nothing in them that she doesn't already know."
But that's not the point. You're told that they're boyfriend girlfriend and they kiss, and then all of a sudden they're brother and sister. So you're never really sure what's going on in this world.
Okay, well we can talk about it from a practical standpoint of movie making, or we can talk about it from a mythical standpoint of storytelling. But I don't think we can. It's hard to flip back and forth. You can say I'm okay with it because they didn't know that he didn't even know he was going to be able to make a second movie. It was supposed to be called Star Killer in the Lord of the Wills or whatever it was called. I mean, it was totally different in 1975. So it is what it is. It got made and it got sent, put out there, and it was super successful. And he didn't even write the second one. He had two other people write it. So Lawrence
Kasdan. Was it Lawrence Kasdan?
Yeah, and then Lee Brackett is a woman who started writing it, and then she sadly passed away before it was even made, I guess. And then so they brought in Lawrence Kasdan to rewrite the whole thing. Wow. So pretty much Lawrence Kasdan wrote the whole thing. But anyway, yes, there's practical things. I don't even think they knew that Luke and Leia were brother and sister.
No way.
In Empire Strikes Back. No way. But they're we have to have what kind of reveal can rival Darth Vader being Luke's father, their brother and sister. That's the only way that they could even try to rival that.
And so, it didn't rival it.
No, it didn't. And they were chasing after the Empire Strikes Back. The same
way that they're
revelation.
trying to rival it again in the Rise of Skywalker.
And you can say it's an homage. Maybe it is.
It just falls flat.
But it is a little difficult, I think. So it's a hard pill to swallow. And
they couldn't have planned this from the beginning, though. So the Marvel franchise, again, 22 movies, and they pretty much got their plan in order.
But if you would have told Kevin Feige right after Iron Man came out that he was going to make a movie that looked and sounded and acted like Thor Ragnarok, he would say no.
No way.
So there's no way.
Sure.
Even Guardians of the Galaxy. He would say, wait a second, so there's a human, but maybe, but then everybody else is aliens?
They still had a general enough plan, though, that they could fit in these almost different genre movies within this grand master plan, and they can't even do it for 3 in these Star Wars. I mean,
yeah, it's a good point. It's a valid point, Justin. I completely didn't even think that thought until you said it. I was like, yeah, why didn't they structure at least an outline about this is where it's going to begin, this is where it's going to... Yeah, you got a point. That's a very valid point.
I think that what it comes down to, and this is just me pontificating, is Kathleen Kennedy really wanted to get artisan filmmakers
that's
in there
awesome.
And let them run.
Sure.
And then somebody else...
Can you get them in a room one time and just go over the plan? What's the game plan?
Like, we need blocks. Just give me some blocks.
What's the arc of these characters? I mean,
you can do that, but then at the same time, just hearing what Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams, when they started writing, which I'm sure it was a very hurried writing process, they said they literally had like a whiteboard with like sticky notes in there. Like, what do you want to see in this movie? Like, do you want to see somebody transfer a lightsaber between one person to another? Let's do it.
I mean,
do you want to see a bunch of Star Destroyers coming up out of the water? Let's do it. And they're awesome.
Sure.
They're great scenes.
Sure.
But they might not fit together in the same way that it would fit together.
Star Wars made by committee. That's what it is, instead of like a through line. It's very simple.
So was there a third movie written?
No.
And they scrapped it? And then after The Last Jedi, was there a plan in place? And then they said, because, it's a different director, it's a different writer, were they going to go with a different screenplay?
Yeah, from what I've read, Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly wrote a script right around the time that they were making Last Jedi. And that script, since nobody got in a room together, this is all just things I've read online. That script brought Luke Skywalker back from the dead to the living, and that is possibly why.
How did he die?
What? No, he died in Last Jedi.
Oh, you're talking about a script, not a general script of all three movies.
No,
just
Colin Trevorrow,
Rise of Skywalker. I'm sorry,
and Derek Connolly wrote the script for Episode 9, and they said, like, here's the first draft, and gave it to Kathleen Kennedy and whoever else, and in there was, they're going to bring back Luke Skywalker, like from the dead, like out of the grave. Even though he was one with the Force, he's now not one with the Force and is just like walking around like anybody else. And they kept going back and being like, you can't do that. And then he's like, yeah, but I want to do it. So then finally they just...
It wouldn't be so glaring to me if we hadn't already seen it done well with Marvel. Like, Disney knows how to do this already and do it on a grander scale. So
they're hands off with Marvel Studios, though. They don't put their fingers in that pie.
It just feels it feels like there wasn't a plan. It feels rushed, and this is what we got.
Well, we're gonna get more of it someday.
Oh, no, we will. It felt like a video game to me. I was waiting for someone to hand me a controller. Now, this has nothing to do with the story. I think the pacing of the movie was nuts. It was, okay, I compare it to one of the very first scenes in the movie where Poe is making these crazy light speed maneuvers.
Yeah.
And like planet after planet after planet within like 5 seconds. That's how the rest of the movie went. It was like, now they're on a jungle planet. Now they're at Burning Man.
Yes.
Now they're on a creepy alien-looking H.R. Geiger world.
Yeah.
Now they're somewhere else. Now they're in like the SS. They're banging on doors in the snow world, and I couldn't keep up with it. And I'm pretty well versed in it, but like I could not keep up with what was going on. And finally, I just sat back and I was like, "Things are happening. Chewie's getting a medal." Things are...
You called it, huh?
No. I just accepted it when I saw it. I was like, okay, now he's getting a medal. I don't know why.
That's actually... It's a little bit better. I just read this very recently. And I noticed it when I was watching the second time. When Leia lays down at the end, she's holding... It's Han's Yavin medal. It's not... So Chewie never got a medal. Chewie still hasn't gotten a medal, so... People who were like, "Oh, Chewie got a medal." No, that's a piece of nostalgia to remember Han by.
Instead of concentrating on things like silly things like that. Sorry, but
it is silly,
I'm a fan of Star Wars. That never occurred to me that Chewie didn't get a medal. Paul, did that ever occur to you that Chewie never got a medal?
That's a whole thing.
And you and that like bugged you.
Not until they did it.
Right.
And then I went, oh, he finally got one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I remembered
it literally, it did not even cross my mind. I was like,
because you're Wookieist.
Now he's getting a medal. Yeah, right. I didn't understand why things were happening. And if that is happening to me during a movie, any movie, that is a problem. Yep. I mean, I'm just sitting there. I'm a victim to what is on the screen instead of being engaged in it. I'm almost like just being... And all of a sudden there's 10,000 ships at the end in this huge battle and things are blowing up and
That's kind of cool, though. I mean, just the fact that the juxtaposition of nobody showed up at the end of Last Jedi to help them out, and then at the end of this film, everybody's there, and it's like just random ships. It's not all, fighters. It's just ships from throughout the galaxy that are there to help out, and they've all found their way there.
It wasn't like it was a surprise that somebody was going to come. That was
because you got Chewie and Lando.
Completely. It was like they kept saying, "Oh boy."
There's nothing wrong with that, though, is there? I mean, do you feel like there's something wrong with even though there's breakneck speed, you're kind of like you get to feel that like there is no hope until you're like, well, actually, I totally forgot that Lando and Chewie aren't here, so they're coming. So I think that's just normal filmmaking, right? I mean, okay, like Avengers, when Tony is taking that the nuclear weapon up into space, you're like, so Tony's gonna die. Like, do you feel like are there stakes in this film?
Which film?
In
Rise of Skywalker?
Not in Rise of Skywalker. Because, I don't know, Avengers, I kind of felt like, they're probably not going to get rid of Tony Stark, but they could.
I felt like he could have at that point.
But then in this film, we've already seen Chewie die and not die. So
there were
stakes?
4 fake out deaths in this movie.
Are you counting C-3PO?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he that was marketed. He said, I want to look at my friends one last time. And you're like,
see, I didn't watch the trailer, but
well, yeah. I mean,
still, you're right. Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is going to have some stakes. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, wow. And he's going to have his memory wiped. Oh no, 2 minutes later, he gets it restored. And then Chewie's dead. Oh my gosh. He got killed just like that. Oh no. 30 seconds later, there's a second freighter.
There is a second freighter. If you watch it again, there are 2,
I'm sure.
There's 2 transports or whatever.
And then Kylo Ren dies, fake out death. He's okay. And then Rey dies, fake out death. She's okay.
Mm-hmm. That is touching.
How
though.
many times can you do
the Kylo and Rey thing is. Did you not? You didn't get any feeling from that?
No feeling. I have no feeling.
What about you?
I loved it.
That's okay. That's good.
I'm a Shakespeare fan, and that's Romeo and Juliet at its best. It's exactly what they did in the Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes version of Romeo and Juliet, where he at the very last minute sees her, or she at the very last minute sees him, and then he dies. I'd never seen that before. So when they did that here, I thought it was great. And I also, other than Chewie, and by the way, I would have walked out of the film if they had really killed Chewie.
Really?
So I literally said, yeah, I was pissed. I was like, what?
He's like a dog then. Because I'm
not
that
in
way,
that
but
way.
you're not going to kill the dog in the
I
movie.
knew they weren't going to kill him like that. I thought there was a possibility. I mean, they've been killing off everybody else.
Could have killed off Rose. I mean,
yeah, but other than his fake out death, they what's the second fake out death? Oh, C-3PO.
Yeah.
Well, they say in that sequence, well, R2-D2, what about his backup? Oh, that's never trustworthy, which it's not based on New Hope, because the transmission is weird and they have to have it fixed, and that's what gets Luke Skywalker involved in it, and that's how he sees Princess Leia for the first time. So there's a precedence for it. As for the Kylo Ren and Rey scene, I don't know. There's something about those tremendous actors and how they handled those scenes that I've explained this to Josh many times, Justin, that I sometimes can't separate great acting from not great filmmaking. So if I think that the scene as an actor has integrity, and that they do, Adam Driver is like my new favorite person of all time right now.
Yep.
And, and she's amazing too. In these movies in particular. So maybe the high octane acting made me not see these things that you're bringing up. I totally hear what you're saying. It was a point somebody else made. There's 4 fake out deaths, or there's 4 deaths that don't really happen. It would be much better if you really wiped C-3PO's memory completely. And it doesn't just, with all due respect, it doesn't just get wiped and then it gets back. It's a little bit where they play with the fact that he can't remember things and he's meeting people for the first time and all that other stuff. It's not a long period of the film. I'll give you that.
For
but
laughs.
There is some time. Yeah, absolutely. But there's a lot of things in other Star Wars films that are done for laughs that I think are cheeseball. And I probably can't think of one example right now, but I will. But I think that, though, especially the Rey Kylo Ren scene is so emotionally impactful for me that I was like, okay, I buy it.
What about the kiss?
You know, my niece, who also listens to our podcast a lot, she hated that kiss. She was like, it almost ruined the movie for me. I don't know. The kiss to me doesn't seem like a romantic kiss. It seems like a moment where two people are so overwhelmed by their situation that they express themselves in a kiss. Now, one might say that if it was two guys, unless they had that preference, would they just all of a sudden kiss out of the traumatic experience that they just had? Maybe in another lifetime we'll get there where it's okay to express yourself with another guy like that, unless that's your preference. So that's a good point. Would they have done it if it was two guys at the end who having that emotional scene? Would they have just kissed? For me, though, even though it was a male and female, it wasn't necessarily a romantic kiss. It was a bonding kiss where two characters have finally met each other on the same level. Every time you meet these two characters, one is trying to do something, the other one's trying to escape, the other one's trying to do something, the other one's trying to turn her or turn him, and they're going back and forth, and then they kind of set it up. That's why I love this kind of talk about Last Jedi doing so many right things. All of a sudden now, 2 years later, it's like the film that's done all the right things. 2 years ago, people were like destroying that film. So, and I understand why. But my point to that is, in The Last Jedi, there is this connection to Rey and Kylo that hasn't existed before. They can force transfer each other into different rooms. And of course, you got that like sexy scene where he has his shirt off, and that's supposed to have some kind of like sexuality to it. And I get that, which is odd for a Star Wars film, but I accepted it for what it was. So there has been that tension building all the way up. And when that scene hit its climax, if they had not kissed, I might have thought to myself, oh, they should have kissed. Like I could feel it coming.
So like if she would have said thank you, if she would like if he would have like brought her back to life and she would have said thank you, like I don't know if that would have had as much emotional resonance. Like I guess maybe for us humans, that's like the ultimate thank you, maybe? I don't know if that's what we're looking at, but there's a lot of people out there who really want Rey and Kylo to be a thing. Like they are definitely...
They are a thing, though.
Yeah.
Are they?
They are a thing. They are bound. There's a
You're right.
Between but they want them to be a sexual thing, is what I'm saying. Like they want them to be boyfriend and girlfriend.
Paul makes
and
a good
skip
point
down
that
the...
the kiss didn't mean that. I hadn't thought about that, Paul, until you just said that. It was more than like a romantic, sexual thing. It was like we're bound together.
They're a dyad.
For good or bad. Yeah, they're like the last of their kind, and
that very well may be the case.
Yeah, and that's good. I like that. I like that.
Well, I just think that sometimes we sexualize things in movies that don't necessarily need to be. I was in church once, and for whatever reason, I was like 10 or 11 years old, and they have a cry room where you take your children to go if they get upset in church, and you could hear the mass through the speakers. And there was a family who I could overhear some of their conversations. They were very much in an emotional state. The whole family was in this emotional state. And because I'm a little eavesdropper, I was paying attention, and somebody had passed away that was really important in their life. So when you say peace be with you in the Catholic Mass, you shake each other's hand. The father turned to the son, and it was very established that that was his son. And the son was maybe 13 or 14. Maybe. And the father, 30-ish, give or take. And he turned to his son and he gave him the biggest kiss on the lips. And I just thought it was a really beautiful moment because he was saying to his son, we've lost something, we've lost somebody, but I love you desperately. And it was nothing sexual about it. It was actually one of the most beautiful kisses I've ever seen in my life. But in this society, we have a tendency, that kind of affection, to sexualize it. And I understand that because that is an intimate thing to do. But in other countries, men hold hands and men kiss each other, and women hold hands and women kiss each other. And in some parts of this country, that's okay, without it being, like I said before, preference. So for me, I guess I just didn't sexualize that kiss. I don't necessarily have a problem with them being attracted to each other, Rey and Kylo Ren. They're both sexy people. Good for you. Go for it. You've already seen him half naked. Good for you. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But for me, that moment didn't feel that way to me.
Yeah, I think that it's difficult in films because you have such limited amount of time. Now, this is an exception because these are 3 films. We've seen them over 6 hours and change. But at the same time, like, you only have so much time on screen with these characters. And so a kiss on screen with any character in any movie is going to mean a lot more than, your next door neighbor kissing somebody else, whatever. It's somebody you see every day kissing somebody else you see every day is not as big of a deal as two people you see in a film. So it's going to hold more weight in general. But I do think that you could look at it in a cynical way and say, like, it's fan service and fan service only. But you can also, I think, I agree with Justin. I think your take is it's centered in the right place. It's looking at it from the motivations of each of those characters, as opposed to looking at it from somebody who's writing Kylo Ray fan fiction.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the Emperor's plan is completely obtuse to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense because he wants
he changed
Kylo
his mind
to kill Rey.
He changed his mind at least 3 times. He wants Kylo to kill Rey.
Yeah, you got a point.
He wants Rey to kill him.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he wants to kill both of them.
He
and
wants
just
to suck the life away
their
from
life
them.
and then regain his powers like
Because they're
that.
a dyad.
And so by the time they kissed, I was so confused and like out of it because I didn't understand the stakes. I didn't understand the plan. I didn't understand why he was there. Why is the Emperor here? What is his plan?
Is the Emperor dead?
Was he a spirit? Is that his... Who were the people...
She melted his face off. Is that enough to make him dead?
All the congregants, were they physically there, or were they spirits of all the Sith?
Yes, I think that's what they're supposed to represent, is spirits of all the Sith before
So
him.
did they bring him back to life, though?
I don't think so, because he's all like decrepit. Like, he's got like half of a hand. If they brought him back, or if he was restored somehow, then he should probably be like skipping around.
So give me a reason why this villain, who we thought was a problem solved, give me a good reason why he's back, and then give me a plan that is comprehensible to me. It had neither.
Who represents the Sith other than Snoke? Okay, who represents the Sith other than Kylo Ren? Snoke, right? In the first movie.
I mean, but Snoke was a clone.
We didn't know that in the first movie. Yeah.
I know, but what was he?
There's supposed to be 2 Sith always. I do know because I watched all the movies.
I know, but
they're supposed to be.
They
you're right.
Their own rules all the time.
That's true. So when Snoke died, then I guess there's like a void in the Sith or something. But Snoke was made up by. Snoke was made up by the.
This is not
Emperor.
This is not like, I realize this is a story about space wizards and laser swords.
Sure.
So I'm not going to pick it apart for that. There are no explosions in space. We shouldn't even be hearing these vehicles when they're flying around. It defies all laws of physics. But these are film plot points that need to be answered to a viewer's satisfaction. And these are the simplest of plot points. Like, give me an antagonist with clear motives. That's as simple as they come. And I don't think this movie had that at all.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm mad about it. No, I'm kidding.
So I'm going to bring up a couple of scenes that I really enjoyed. First of all, I'm going to talk about the score because the score is amazing. And the sad part is this is the last time, according to John Williams, this is the last time he's going to write a score for a Star Wars movie. He's getting pretty old, though. I mean, how much money
still
can
needs
you
a
have?
paycheck.
How much money can you have, though?
Although the Mandalorian soundtrack is killer.
Well, so it's Ludwig
I know we don't want to talk
Göransson
about that now, but it's killer. So if that's the direction that it's going, 100% on board.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, and Giacchino did a good job with Rogue One too. Yeah,
totally.
So I'll also talk about a few scenes that I really enjoyed. I guess you guys can bring up a few scenes that you enjoyed. I loved seeing Rey flying in. Well, I loved seeing Luke pull up the X-wing from the water. Finally, him being able to use the Force to pull up the X-wing, and also he's a Force ghost, which is crazy. I don't know if there's a precedent for that, like Force ghosts actually moving. Well, he catches the lightsaber, so. But anyway, he raises that up out of the water. The problem is that, and I told you this earlier today, Justin. The problem is that Mark Hamill can't get out of his own way. He's so excited that he's Luke Skywalker that he totally overacts. Did you get that, Paul? Like, did you see his? He's only
you can see he's
a couple scenes, and he like milks it.
Milks it like he did that creature that with the green milk from the teat of the alien.
Yeah. Watch the way he walks into that scene. You can see he puffs out his chest and it's almost, I don't want to be one of the cynical ones, but it almost is like, I'm coming to solve all the questions people had about The Last Jedi. Here I come. Here I come. And the walk is very, maybe Force ghosts are more confident in Force land, Force heaven, whatever. But I noticed that the first time. I thought, they probably gave him a really good speech and he can't wait to talk about it. And I just realized that solves the problem of her burning Kylo Ren's ship. I just realized that they raise it from.
But at the same time, I just felt like it was kind of like Mark Hamill dial it down just a bit. Because even when he lifts up, when he lifts up the X-wing, you're like, this is awesome, and you get to see him. Yeah. But he does that like weird. They like stay on him for just an extra, half a second. He does this weird smirk, and he's like, yeah, that's right. I'm lifting up an X-wing, and it's like, first of all,
Yoda.
First of all, Rey doesn't know anything about what this is about.
He has a weird structure to his fingers when he's doing that too. Watch it again. It's this weird, like, it's not a normal Force hand thing. It's like this. I don't know what it was. I don't want to make fun of him. Maybe he has some issues, but like it looks weird. I noticed it. I was like, oh, that's weird. But whatever.
He wasn't
maybe
like
the
that
Force.
In The Last Jedi.
No, and I was just watching The Last Jedi like an hour ago.
That's a director issue right there. Ryan
like not
Johnson
reining him in.
Yeah, is more maybe of an act. And Paul could surely speak to this better than me.
Hey, let me make a point here. You know how everybody had a problem with the way that Luke's character was written in The Last Jedi, and then Mark Hamill came out and said something along the lines of, that's not my Luke Skywalker. You know what? Well, didn't he read that script? Didn't he act that script? Didn't he know that those things were going to be said? How come he is now saying after the reception of The Last Jedi, I kind of don't agree with the way that they went? Well, you're kind of the character, dude, and you're kind of the guy. So if anybody could have stopped it, it could have been you. Why didn't you? You must have liked what you did in The Last Jedi when you were acting it, because now you're coming back and saying, oh no, that's not my Luke Skywalker. It's just a point that's always bothered me.
Well, at the end of the day, I would much rather see a story about Luke Skywalker that shows different facets of his personality and not the Skywalker that we all thought or expected. I'd much rather see something new, even if it wasn't what you were expecting. Maybe you were disappointed by it. It's still new and it's trying something. And seeing the rise of Skywalker,
valid point,
brought out the good points in The Last Jedi for me. Like the way that it at least tried. It tried to do new things with characters, beloved characters that we were familiar with, and we thought we were going to see their progress and their character arcs, and it went a totally new direction. I'm all for that. Every time.
Yeah.
Love it.
No, yeah, I agree. And it's interesting when you look at, it would have been interesting to see a Rian Johnson trilogy, because you see in the first movie, the Force Awakens, that J.J. Abrams co-wrote and directed, you see that it is Han Solo's movie, and Han Solo is essentially the same character throughout the film. Now, he does get that emotional last scene with Kylo Ren, but really, he's there to service the story, to cause Kylo Ren to really question himself. That's to begin to break through the mold, like to break through, to crack open a little bit of his heart. And that's but as far as the character of Han Solo, he doesn't necessarily change. He's run away. He's gone back to his old ways after Ben and Luke fall out. So that's one thing. But then we look at Last Jedi, and you see how the Luke character does change throughout the film, like from the beginning to he literally says the thing he says that he's not going to do the thing that he does at the end. I mean, that talk about a change in a character. So and it's for a good reason. And then in this film, they were up against it with Leia, so they did what they could. We should talk about that. I know I was trying to talk about like great scenes and I didn't even get through my scene. My scene was Rey wearing Luke's X-Wing helmet because we get to see at the beginning of Force Awakens, she wears an X-Wing helmet and eats a bunch of stuff. And in this one, she's actually wearing an X-Wing helmet, flying an X-Wing and kicking butt. So anyway, let's talk about Leia and
I'm sorry. I'll just tell you my hot take on it. It was super distracting. I know they were up against it.
Yeah.
Whenever she was on screen, the eye lines were not right. She was not looking at who she was supposed to be talking to.
And she only said one line
she said
every
one
shot.
line every shot. It was obvious that it was like reused. And it really struck me as disrespectful as an actor, Paul, to take scenes that you had done from another movie and repurpose them in complete different context. How would you be happy with that as an actor?
Happens all the time.
Really do that with Clint Eastwood?
All the time. Yeah, that happens all the time. I can't, of course, now I'm in the chair. I can't think of an example, but there are tons of movies out there where you film something in the first of the trilogy and it comes back later on. It happens all the time. The thing that I think your point is valid, and I think it's because I'm wondering if we can separate ourselves from knowing that Carrie Fisher has passed away. And knowing that this is used because she has passed away, can we separate ourselves? What would we have thought of it if we did not know that and that it was reused footage if we didn't know it? I agree with you on the eye lines, the eye sight lines. I agree with you on that, but it's not that bad. I'm wondering how much of that would we have noticed if it was just the way that it was. Let's say Carrie Fisher decided she didn't want to do the third movie and they said, okay, well, you're contractually not obligated to, but we're going to go ahead and use your footage from the second movie. That happens all the time. The Lord of the Rings is a great example. Those films were filmed all at one time. So things that were supposed to be in the second film and ended up in the third film, things that were in the third film ended up in the first film, so forth and so on. And then a lot of stuff was taken out. And then you see it later on the DVD extras, which is a good thing for a fan. There didn't seem to be a plausible reason to utilize Leia in the scenes that she was in. It seemed to be they were forced to do it, so they tried to do it as best as they possibly can. But it doesn't add anything to the story. It doesn't add anything to those scenes. Anybody could have said the things that she said. I do like the fact that she passes away in the movie, so we could take a moment to say goodbye to her and Carrie Fisher. I like the fact that she waited to force evaporate, whatever they call that.
Become one with the force.
Force dissolve until Kylo... Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it looks like, right? Especially with Obi-Wan, right? In the and he just disappears. Especially that she waited for Kylo Ren to pass too. I liked all of that stuff. But I have to agree with you, Justin, and I believe Josh is probably on the same page with this, but I'm not sure. It just, they had to, so they did. As an actor, I don't think it can bother you because you sign that piece of paper and they can use whatever they want to use and they can manipulate it any way that they want. At this point, they can do, you know, your whole face on a whole nother actor to get a performance out of you. If, you know,
don't bring that up.
If you were to get fired or quit a movie, although you probably couldn't quit. If you were to get fired, they could contractually say, we've got this footage. We don't like the way you physically did your character, so we're going to remove your face, put it on this actor's body, like they did with Michael Douglas and Ant-Man, and there is nothing you could do about it. As long as you were paid for that image to be used in these three films, then it's okay. But it just doesn't, there wasn't enough of what she did from The Last Jedi to fill in the blanks of what she needed to do in Rise of Skywalker, because she would have been in the battle and she would have been dictating all the stuff in the battle and taking care of, which is probably what Rose should have done. they should have somehow talked about how Leia went to her chambers because she doesn't feel well because Kylo Ren is getting ready to die and she can feel it. So Rose, I need for you to do this, and this. And all you needed was a simple scene of
Poe should have been there. Poe is the general. In Last Jedi, Poe's the one who learns.
Yeah, you got a point.
The what to do and what not to do, what the repercussions of like just kind of going off and doing, going crazy.
He had a nice character arc.
He had a great character arc in Last Jedi. And then now this general is a flyboy again.
Yep.
So
put him right back where he was.
Yeah. So that's
nothing.
difficult.
Yeah.
And Rose could have been out there helping them. And, I'm not saying Rose had to be out there. I'm just saying like that's a natural
but Rose should have
progression
been out there.
To her arc and to her and Rey's relationship, which was established in
Finn's
Last Jedi
relationship.
Sorry,
yes.
her and Finn's relationship,
right?
In the Last Jedi. So that I in some ways was a missed opportunity. I will say something good about what they did. I think all of the footage was from Force Awakens, actually, because I don't know if legally Rian Johnson probably would have had to sign off on them using. I don't know who owns, if it's just like Lucasfilm at large owns every image and Rian Johnson doesn't have any recourse over anything, or if he has some sort of like a say in how they used the film that he was the director on. But anyway, I think it was all old footage, or not old footage, but unused footage from Force Awakens that they used. But they changed her hair, they changed her clothes, they changed the lighting on her, and it's a 2D image shot on film, and it didn't look horrible. I did not get Tarkin mouth. I did not get any of that stuff. And I didn't know that they changed her clothes. Like, I assumed that they had to change the lighting and the background, the setting, but I didn't know that they changed. They did. I saw like a side-by-side, something picture on Twitter. It's amazing what they did. And like they added shadows and all that stuff. I mean, like they did this all. It's amazing that we can do that nowadays. Doesn't mean we have to do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing we can do it. It's much the same as like when we had this discussion about Rogue One. It's amazing they can make a General Tarkin or an Admiral Tarkin, but they don't have to make an Admiral Tarkin. So
they shouldn't have. They should have done it less.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that the cool part is that what we did see looked as good as it could look, but it came off very clunky. Did you guys notice that the Ben and Han? Oh, what about the Han Solo sequence? Did anybody have a problem with that? Even though Han's not a Force ghost because he did blah 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 blah.
I just noticed how ragged he looked.
Yeah, why did he shave?
Oh man, he looked super ragged. That was not
it's only been like
time.
3 years.
If that was supposed to be Kylo Ren's memory, then why is he aging his father in his memory? Why isn't it the last time that he saw him? I don't know. It was distracting, and I thought, okay, we're redoing this now. I was very cynical at that point in the movie. I apologize. I was just like, okay, now we're redoing the death scene, but we're going to make it.
You know what though? I think it's well done.
Yeah, but wait,
I think it's well done. I liked it.
I like Harrison Ford. I do.
But it's a callback to everything that we need, because when Kylo Ren can't say "I love you, Dad," he says "I know," which is the reverse of what happens when she says "I love you" and he goes "I know," the very famous Han Solo improv line. Yep. So it was kind of touching that they were able to write that in there.
Also,
like that.
He says, I know what I have to do, and I don't think I'm strong enough.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. It's a complete redo.
The Force Awakens. And also, he says when it's him and when it's Kylo and Rey in with Snoke, and Snoke is telling in Last Jedi, and Snoke is telling Kylo to strike down Rey, he picks up the lightsaber and he says, "I know what I need to do." And I was like, oh, that is sweet. So now Kylo has said, "I know what I need to do" in all 3 films. I thought that was so cool. But I did like the Ben and Han. And I do like that once again, it's back to this like single line explains it all. Like where Ben says, I guess he's Kylo at that time, says, "I know you're just a memory." And then he's like, I'm your memory. So, I mean, they explain it away and it's a single line and we move on. It's not, it's not this weird, like I'm an actual Force ghost and anybody can see me and I can pick up X-Wings. It's a different thing. So
it did surprise me when Harrison Ford showed up.
Me too.
I was like, oh, whoa. So that was, I did like that.
It does make sense that all 3 of them are in the last movie of the saga.
Right.
So.
Right.
That's good. I'm glad they figured out a way. I think that's well done. I don't know. Yeah. And that battle on the old Death Star ruins is very well done.
I have a question about that. When she climbs up that tower, okay, to get the little GPS thing.
I think it's the tractor
Pyramid.
Is that the I love how you both said that at the same time. Is that the same tower where Darth Vader tells Luke he's his father? Because it sure looks
that'd
like
be cool.
it.
It's like
I
a
thought she was
wedge
in the
type thing.
Emperor's throne room.
She was, but she climbs up something before she gets to the Emperor's throne room.
Oh,
And she almost falls.
yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at it, there's this like
That wasn't on the Death Star though. That was in Cloud City.
That was in Cloud City. No, I think they were trying to do an homage.
no.
It was in Cloud City.
Oh yeah,
But I think they were trying to do an
Okay.
homage to the tractor beam, like where Obi-Wan was, but that was in the first one. So I would guess they would have like a thing where he like pulls the tractor beam. He has like turns a bunch of knobs and stuff. But I think maybe that was kind of close to. I don't really know.
I did like their fight on top of the ruined Death Star, where Rey was getting physically tired. You could see she was like struggling just to like strike that next blow. But I could not get over the fact that she was not wet at all. On the skiff ride out there over the waves, she's dry as a bone. She gets in there, she gets up, she's
Is she?
I watched for it. I was like, oh my gosh, Kylo Ren is soaked.
Yeah.
But to the bone.
She has a Force raincoat on.
Yeah, she was using.
It's probably because they don't want their lead actress to be just like drenched in.
I mean, I get it, but
Water.
why? It's little.
She also wears mascara or whatever.
Sure, right?
So it's
No,
like,
no,
I mean,
get it.
come on.
I get it, but still, it's little things like that were starting to add up for me. Little things turn into big things for me.
The issue is not that she's not wet. The issue is that you noticed
Yes.
it. And if the story was compelling and if you were engaged and you were following it, it probably would have been your second or third, or even your Twitter followers would have said, oh, by the way, she's not wet. And you would have gone, oh.
Yeah, who cares?
Right,
who
because
cares?
you would have been, yeah, I get it.
You're right.
I get it. I never noticed it. I never noticed it.
That just shows you my state of mind during the movie. I was nitpicking it, and I never
Yeah,
want to do
totally.
that.
So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
about the Force transference? Like I did like how they kind of like
They built on
peppered
that.
it in. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like at first he grabs her necklace, and that's where he
Well, at
finds
the
out.
beginning in The Last Jedi, which was
That's
good
true.
foreshadowing, they just touched and he was a little bit wet, like from the rain that she had. So
Yep.
that was awesome. And then they built on that
Yes.
in this movie.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden
Yep.
at the end, they're doing it with lightsabers. And that one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he's reaching behind him, his homeboys are around him, his
Yep.
former friends,
Yep.
who we don't know anything about, that should have had much bigger stakes than it did. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But he reaches behind, he's got the lightsaber, and then he gives a little shrug.
Now, okay, is that supposed to be the same shrug that Han Solo gives?
It
at
was
the
totally
end
a
of
Han
Return of the-
Solo move.
Okay,
That was, I was like, that's his dad's, that is a trait from his dad right there. That was good. And then he starts going to town. But it's his buddies, man.
Yeah.
It should have been more than we got. But that little shrug, I loved it.
And he's also using his uncle's lightsaber. Now, wouldn't it have been cooler if she would have given him Leia's lightsaber? Because that would have been his mom's lightsaber?
But the last time we saw that lightsaber, now this is a question I have. Didn't
It
Rey and
broke in
didn't they
half.
break in half?
It did.
So where did that come from? That's what took me.
Good question.
I was actually thinking about that during that fight when he all of a sudden got the lightsaber. I was like, wait a minute. Where did that lightsaber come from?
It got reconstituted. Maybe she got both pieces of it after they were done. What happens after the throne room fight? I don't know, because they both separate, right? They both go their own ways.
Right. Well, they break the lightsaber
Yes.
and it like blows up.
Busts in half.
And then Rey gets on like the Snook, his ship and like flies away, and then they're separate.
Okay. So somehow, I guess she must have like gotten both pieces of it and put it back together again. That's the only thing I can think of.
Lame, man.
It is a little
lame writing. And
Well, the reason why is because they need to have Luke's See,
I know
think
the reason
they probably
why, but-
got really ticked that he broke that lightsaber, that Rian Johnson broke that lightsaber.
So you just put it back together off screen?
Yeah, that's what they did.
Well, as a matter of fact, they got it off screen too. In The Force Awakens, the little creature,
Porgs?
no,
What do you mean?
the voiced by
Maz Kanata.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
yes,
Maz
thank
Kanata.
you.
Yes.
She had the lightsaber, and they were like, "How'd you get this?" And she said, "Oh, that's a story for another time." And I guess
that's
I gotta
gonna be a
read.
Disney Plus
I guess I
show.
gotta read the comics or Disney Plus. Yeah,
Yeah.
So
So, well, I mean, but still, either way, we still got that scene, though. I mean, it doesn't even have to be Luke's lightsaber, I don't think. But just the fact that she passed a lightsaber to him and the way that it was shot, I mean,
it's cool, but I was hung up on the fact that, like, I was taken out of it by the fact
Because
of
of that
wondering
lightsaber.
where it came from.
Yeah. But back to my original point, there's a precedence for everything. Where did Kylo Ren's lightsaber came
he
from?
made it.
Come from? It's never been answered.
but it
Right,
doesn't
but it's
need
never
an
been
answer.
answered. It's
I
never
don't know
been-
They're
that
supposed
needs
to
an
make
answer.
their
Right.
lightsaber. Where does Rey's lightsaber come
Right,
from?
but if
She
we
made
see
it.
specifically something gets shattered, broken, destroyed, like the Emperor,
You got a point. You got a point.
on screen, this
You got
is
a point.
on screen.
Yeah.
We need to know how they get fixed on screen.
Yeah.
I mean,
They fixed his helmet on
All right.
screen.
Yeah, you got a point.
Why
Sure.
can't they fix the lightsaber on screen?
why can't they fix the Emperor on screen? Put him back together. He exploded.
Yeah, you got a point. I'll give it to you. You're making this movie a lot worse than I
don't mean
expected
to
it to
do
be.
that.
No,
I'm
just kidding.
sorry.
No, the bottom line for me is sometimes I get emotionally invested in things and I can't see it clearly. And your points are valid. You're absolutely correct. They need to put something in there to explain where Palpatine came from. It's too big of a
Ask.
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah,
it's
that's
too
what I was
big
trying
of
to
a
think
resolve.
of. Yeah, pulling out of left
Right.
field. Deus Ex Machina. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, you just can't. I mean, there's a reason why they used that in Greece and the Greek times was because they couldn't figure out how to solve the problems of
Yeah.
the play. So they just had a basket and a god come down and say, you go you way, you love her, he loves him, blah, 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 done. Boom. But you're right. It's too big of a force, no pun intended, to not have it explained. And I never once thought they do break that lightsaber. And it's never explained how she has it without it being an issue before. I don't have a problem with them not explaining how Maz Kanata has it because
Sure.
who knows why she has what she has. There's 1,000 different, like you said, Disney Plus stories waiting to happen based on that. Same with Rose. Mark my words, they're going to come out with a series about what happened with her. Guaranteed. Because people are not happy with the way that they handled her.
Okay, but wait, should they
Which I
do
think is
that
great.
just because people aren't happy? Isn't that why we're here?
The whole movie was made around people not happy.
But
I don't have a problem with that show, but
they
that's not the
would
reason
not
to
make,
do that
they
show.
wouldn't make another movie. Yeah, I got what you're saying, but they wouldn't make another movie ever if it wasn't to make somebody happy or if it wasn't to tell a story that they thought were going to affect people. And then if it's a part 2 or part 3, of course they do things based on how people. Now it's a different world because people are reacting instantaneously and you can read it. And I also think that somewhat that's justifiable if it's a good idea. If it's a good idea where they say, well, Luke shouldn't have acted this way, we need that retcon, fix it. I don't necessarily think they needed to do that, but if it's a good idea that a fan says, well, why did this happen? Why didn't we see Luke's lightsaber fixed? And then they go and make a 4th movie and they fix it. That I'm okay with. But just to say we're doing this because this was a controversy in Last Jedi or this was a controversy in New Hope, whatever it may be, just to do it to solve somebody's unhappiness is unacceptable in my opinion. But if it's a good idea and somebody didn't think about it, they don't live in a vacuum with these films anymore. We are as important. We talked about this before, Justin, where we're the audience. We're as important as the filmmakers and the actors. Without us, nobody would go see it. Not that we're as important, but we're an important factor in it. I mean, other than paying $10 or $12, we don't do much, but we are the reason why they're doing it. So we have some form of
stake in it.
Stake in it. So if it's a good idea to retcon something because somebody had a great idea, I don't have a problem with it. To force people into changing something is for me, that says more about J.J. Abrams or whoever fixed it, says more about them cowing down to other people. That I have more of a problem with than actually fixing a plot hole or fixing something like that. But it's interesting, when he grabs that lightsaber, I never once thought to myself, wait, isn't that broken? I was just happy that they could do that they logically extended what they did in Last Jedi. Yeah. This force is so strong now that you can transfer things, which plays on the last battle between Kylo Ren and Luke. I mean, because they physically don't really touch each other, but it's still there. So that to me was so thrilling that I never once thought to myself, it probably would have been the third or fourth time seeing it where I would have gone, wait, wasn't that broken?
Well, but she's been,
especially after I just saw the
she's been using that thing the whole episode or the whole movie, because she, whenever Kylo Ren comes, strafes her on the planet where she goes to, where she ends up blowing up not Chewie, she uses that same, Luke's lightsaber that's her lightsaber the whole movie is Luke's lightsaber. She's using it the whole movie. So
it is?
Oh yeah. Because there's like a close-up shot of that lightsaber.
Then where did she get the second one?
It's Leia's.
He gave it to her.
Luke gave it to her in Octo. It's another, he gave it to her, and then that allows her to
in the Rock.
Have both. Yeah.
One of the most egregious instances of this is when one of the most striking scenes in The Last Jedi, when Laura Dern goes light speed through the
whole dome maneuver.
The whole dome maneuver, and they write it off in 3 seconds.
They have to. I agree with it.
I know, but it's just another example. They were like, we need a whole dome maneuver. No, we can't do that. It's a 1 in a million shot. It'll
At least
never
they
work.
called it out, though.
I know, but why won't it work?
So, well, I mean, there's multiple reasons why, and there's a whole not mythology, but there's a whole methodology behind what ended up happening is she was able to go into hyperspace at this exact right time before the matter hasn't transferred.
That's all after the fact. That's the wikis. I'm just talking about what we saw in the movies. Looked like she just went to light speed and she wiped out a whole fleet of Imperial ships, and it looked easy. And she sacrificed herself, and that was another big theme of The Last Jedi.
Yep.
And it looked like that's totally doable. Why is it a 1 in a million shot?
That means
without the wikis?
Well, because we don't want to. Wait a second. We don't want to turn the Resistance into kamikaze pilots. You can't
get a droid to do it. Tell me why a droid can't do it. I mean,
you're right. Problem solved.
That to me, that was a big problem in The Last Jedi, because I'm like, oh my gosh, they could just do that anytime they wanted. Then why didn't they do that with the Death Star? Why didn't they get X-Wings have light speed, right? Get a droid to operate that bad boy and fly right through that. But they wrote it off. That's a 1 in a million shot, and they never explained why. If that's true, what you said, it's lining up and it's the timing is 1 in a million. Then I'd love to know that. That's all.
It's just like
in the movie, I'd love to know that and not have to do this extracurricular study.
Yeah, and it may be the equivalent of this table is made out of wood and it's solid and my hands are solid, but there's a chance that my hand could actually go through this table, because if the gaps in the atoms line up, then I can actually push through the
sure.
But the chance is it's not 1 in a million, it's 1 in a whatever centillion, but it's still a chance. So I think that's what they were trying to say, is that that's too easy of a move. It had emotional stakes in The Last Jedi, and it was one of the most arresting images of all 9 films. But it's too easy. I mean, it's way too easy.
Then why do it?
Why did they do it?
Why did they do it? It was,
I don't know, because Kathleen Kennedy told Rian Johnson, "Here's your sandbox.
It was for
go play."
that arresting image. I mean, if they wrote it off so easily in this movie, then it cheapens it. It really in the Last Jedi, gosh.
Well, it makes that line that Han Solo tells Luke at in A New
like
Hope.
dusting crops.
No, the where he's like, "I got one," and then Han Solo says "Great shot." Oh no, I know what it was. It was right at the end of the film when when Luke hits the Death Star and it blows up, and then Han Solo says, "Great shot, kid! 1 in a million."
1 in a million.
So it's just the same as blowing up a Death
I
Star.
hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
But anyway, so we haven't talked about Finn and his new relationship. He's a man about town.
Oh yeah, he is
moving around. Rose in one movie.
Sure, drop her.
Yeah, drop her.
No,
move
Ray,
on to Ray in the first movie.
Yeah.
Drop her. Go to Rose in the second
Sure.
one, and then Jana in the third movie.
I didn't know that was her name.
That is her name.
She's
Jana.
introduced in the last hour of the film.
That's right. But I think it's not necessarily just about her and her relationship with Finn. It's about Finn's relationship to other stormtroopers who have mutinied from their what they've
we didn't
been
see
forced
any of
into
that.
doing.
I mean,
well, we were not introduced to specifically any other stormtrooper that was part of her militia or whatever. But
no, but there was a bond between her and Finn because of their shared trauma
but
in the past.
Yes, and I think that what this is cynical me is trying to set up some. They're trying to set up some sort of like group of stormtroopers who mutiny and now become resistance fighters, like ex-stormtrooper resistance fighters.
Oh,
so whatever that is, I don't know what you would call that, but some sort of like elite group of fighters who've been trained as stormtroopers and now are fighting against the Final Order. But I guess the Final Order is dead. I don't really know. I don't understand.
And that's the thing. This movie, it just made me kind of throw up my hands and not really care. That's why I kind of washed my hands of like Star Wars for a while, because I'm just like, this just makes me not. There's a difference between writing in a mysterious way, like, we don't know where the Emperor came from at the time of when he first showed up in the original trilogy. We don't know where he came from, but it was written in such a way that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to know more. I just want to know more about it. This was written in a mysterious way that just makes me not care.
Yeah.
It's bad.
You're right. And you're right. I can imagine, like, if you watch Star Wars and you're like, I want to know more. Like, you sit there and you're like,
that's why the prequels happened.
Yeah, but still, you watch the first Star Wars, you're like, A New Hope, and you're like, I want to know more.
Like the Clone Wars. Holy crap, that sounds
There's a whole
awesome.
war.
Oh my gosh.
Like, but then you start Empire Strikes Back, and now you're on this totally different world. There's snow everywhere, and there's these things called tauntauns.
Yep.
And there's a wampa thing.
I eat it up. Give it to me.
And you're like, I didn't even know I was supposed to worry about this stuff or think about this stuff. And now I've got this on top of the other stuff I don't know.
Yep. That's why it's captured the world the way that it has.
The more movies we have, though, the more they're trying to explain the old stuff instead of showing us the new stuff.
That is the crux of it for me. Advance the story and the
wait
characters.
a second. Wait. You guys just contradicted yourself, though. You started talking about the scene where Finn introduces himself to the stormtrooper lady, and they were bonding. And I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a romantic relationship. I mean, maybe that's what you guys got from it, but I didn't really get that. I think they bonded based on what Justin said. You said
I was
that,
joking. I said he's a man about town. Yes.
Oh, yeah, but
There
you said
was some
something about the
chemistry.
first
There
film,
was some
Force Awakens,
chemistry
and then Rose, or Ray, then Rose, then what's
Jana.
the lady's name? I didn't even know she had a name.
Wow.
Jana?
Yeah, it's TX4236.
Right, but then you just talked about how you didn't know anything, and then it's explained, and then you don't want to know anything because it's a mystery, but then you go back and so it's kind of like have your cake and eat it too. So do we want things to, and then you said introducing new things that we don't really know much about, which happens in the original trilogy, but then when it happens in this film, you think it's a plot hole almost. It's kind of a contradiction.
No, I never said it was a plot hole. I think Jana as a character looks to me more like a setup of another entity, another Lucasfilm entity. Whether it's a show or a movie or whatever, like just the fact that there's going to be that Finn is not an anomaly. Finn is part of a group of people who have done the same exact thing. And I'm assuming that all of them are Force sensitive. I think that's going to be why don't all of the stormtroopers who were taken from their families as kids and who are now active stormtroopers as grown-ups, why don't all of them mutiny? Well, it's because my guess is that most of them are not Force sensitive, whereas Finn, who they establish in this film, is Force sensitive, Janet is probably also force sensitive.
Yeah, she says something along that lines. It just felt that way or something. I just felt it. She says something like that. Like, when did you know you needed to escape or whatever? Now, I think, honestly, I don't want to sound like a jerk or anything, but when you go back and listen to what you guys just talked about, there's some interesting contradictions because of what we're talking about, establishing a world and then changing the world and then reestablishing it.
Well, not necessarily changing it, just building on it in a natural way that keeps you engaged and is not pulling things out from your safe zone that we know things are, you liked this and hey, you paid money for that and you approved of that, so let's just do it again. Instead of building the world, this is already an awesome universe and we can build on it in a cool and interesting way.
But that's what he did in The Last Jedi, and everybody freaked out. He took it into a different direction, although it's really not that much of a different direction if you really focus on it. For me, it's not. Everything Luke does, Obi-Wan has done. Everything Obi-Wan has done, Yoda did. So it's not that new, but when Rian Johnson did what he did, everybody flipped out about it.
And not everybody.
Now I think it got critically pretty good.
Not
I
me.
did. I flipped out on it. I did, but it needed. I needed to see the Rise of Skywalker to see the good points of it, and like,
well,
I
there
admit
you go.
that I was
you.
too harsh on it, and but at least it was trying to say something, and I think it was trying to say something that no other Star Wars movie has ever tried to say before about sacrifice and hope and heroism and what it means to be a hero, and these are like deep things, like the Dark Knight kind of like themes about heroism and symbols, and it's cool when you take away the dumb crap in it. I mean, there was some stupid crap.
I honestly, truthfully believe that once we get about 5, maybe even 7 years away from Rise of Skywalker, just like we're now 2 years away from Last Jedi, and based on what you said, I get what you're saying. Now that you've seen Rise of Skywalker, you're appreciating something that they did in The Last Jedi. You didn't know what you were missing until it was gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's now you see the themes that were in The Last Jedi based on things that are missing in Rise of Skywalker. I honestly, truthfully believe we are way too close to it. Not just us three, just people in general. We're too invested in it. Yeah. We're too much in control of what we have in our soul that this world has done for us. And I think, Josh, to your point about the Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings, it's a great analogy because you're right. Those are open-ended, meaning they started, they had a middle, they ended. The books ended. These stories took place. This is what happened. And they did not go into too many different directions because they couldn't, because the stories were already solidified. But just like anything that we're too close to, a relationship, a friendship, a work relationship, once you get away from it, you kind of have a different perspective of it. That's why they tell couples that it's like a really good idea to sometimes go on separate vacations, because once you get away from each other for a while, you start to really appreciate everything that you've done for each other and vice versa. And then you see each other in a different light and things are kind of calmed down. Not that that necessarily means that there's an issue in the relationship. It just gives you a different perspective. I honestly believe in maybe even 10 years, we're going to feel a little differently about the Rise of Skywalker. Maybe not much, because all of the points that you brought up made me go, oh yeah, oh man, oh yeah. Just like the second time I saw the film, I went, yeah, I see that. Film Twitter was right about that. Yeah, that's an issue. That's an issue. But I think that these things, some of the things that you brought up, Justin, in particular, are just how this world has always worked. And we're right on top of it. It's like the prequels. I can't believe I'm going to say this because I am not a fan of those movies on any level. I have like really bad nicknames for all of them. And every time I speak about those films, I say those nicknames, but I'll never say them on the podcast because I don't want to be disrespectful to Lucas because I think he's a genius. Now that we're this far away and we're this into the world, the prequels are starting to make a little bit more sense. Maybe not Phantom Menace for me, but Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith are starting to have some form of weight that they didn't have 15 years ago, because we're into episode 9. So maybe, and I might be trying to just like sugarcoat it in rose tinted glasses, because I do have a tendency to not necessarily be optimistic, but I definitely see the more positive things in movies. Not that I'm saying that you're seeing negative. You're totally right in everything that you've analyzed, but maybe when we're a little step away from it, and come back to it and say, well, yeah, that's not so much different than what they did in this movie. That's not so much different, because that's what happened to me with The Last Jedi. But that happened to me in the first viewing. I went, that makes perfect sense why they did what they did with Luke, because they've done it with every other main Jedi Master. Yeah. Why not? But we were so connected to Luke for what we knew Luke to be that we couldn't separate ourselves and say, oh, wait. And actually, what they gave Luke to do, and by the way, I love that we spent most of this podcast talking about The Last Jedi. I'm just saying, my favorite film of the year, just saying, what they did with Luke actually had more weight to it, because there was a reason why he took off and became a hermit. There was a severe, interesting weight to it. And then they gave you those Rashomon type flashbacks where Kylo Ren looked at it one way and Luke looked at it another way. There was weight to it. So it actually had much more of an impact than why Obi-Wan just took off to the desert and Yoda just was like, oh yeah, they took over, the Siths took over later. So it actually had more weight. My point to it is, I wonder, will we be talking about this the same way now as we will be once we get separate from it, and once you have some time to see it again, maybe, now because it's still in the theater with your wife, because I think it's a big screen event. It'll be interesting once you've gotten some space to see if anything has changed. I don't know, because if I had told you this time 2 years ago that you're going to look back, and I think maybe I might have said something like that.
You did.
That maybe we need to get some time about the last Jedi. Maybe you might feel a little bit differently about it. Now, you still say you have some issues with it, and they're valid, meaning The Last Jedi. But there's a different view of it now based on a new movie or based on time. So maybe we're just a little too on top of it right now. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. We didn't talk about Lando Calrissian. I mean,
is he Jana's dad?
No, he's not Jana's dad.
Or was he hitting on her? Because it's one or the other.
No.
It's one or the other.
No.
So who are your parents? Who are your parents, baby?
It's not me. Is it me? If it's me, then I don't know you anything.
It's so confusing.
No,
like,
it's a setup for
an editor. It's a setup for
that
a show.
Needed a heavy-handed editor. Because there was some real confusing.
Got a little bit of vibe there. Yeah.
Well,
he's also Lando Calrissian.
What's the dagger? What's the dagger that leads to the... No, first they have to find the ship that leads to the dagger, that leads to the pyramid cube, that leads to the planet, that leads to the bad guy.
Yes.
No different than what happens in Rogue One. We go to 1,000 different planets in that. It's confusing as hell. Who's got what? Who's got the plan for this? And who's got this for that?
And it was confusing, but it was confusing then. It's the same. It was confusing then, but at least you knew the stakes. Like, okay, we know that the end game here is to find these plans for this super weapon. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rogue One had its problems too as a film, but
ultimately this is an action movie and you're going to have action scenes. So, sure. I mean, and they're going to hopefully be good. You've got a lot of money going into it. And so I
just want to know who made that dagger and when, and how did they make the perfect silhouette of the Death Star ruins in the exact same spot that Rey just happened to be standing, and they pulled the Goonies.
Yeah,
and
they totally pulled the Goonies.
And that dagger was supposed to be like an ancient dagger, but it was made in since the Death Star was crashed on that planet.
But when you're watching Goonies, you accept it.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the difference?
But in this movie, I was like,
what's the difference?
Oh my gosh. She's lining it up with the ruins. She's standing in the exact right spot. Just happens to be. Maybe it's the Force.
No, she had to figure it out. She had to figure it out a little bit. It wasn't like she stood she moved, she comes down a little bit. Granted, it's semi of a valid point, but she does move a little bit. It's not like she just holds it up and goes, do-do-do-do-do-do. Yep, there it is. She does move it around a little bit. Justin's like, I'm
not gonna get into this. I'll let you guys duke it out, I guess, because I don't feel.
No, I just didn't. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't get the dagger. I thought it was supposed to be older. Done.
Speaking of landing this plane, I'm trying to land this plane.
I am done with Star Wars. No, I'm not. But for now, I am.
Well, it's totally fine to take a break because, like you said, by taking 2 years and then coming back to Last Jedi, you're seeing different things. As far as the prequels go, I haven't seen them in 15 years. Watching them again, it's very difficult for me to watch those, much like you watching a scene of great acting, Paul, and that covers over any kind of other sins of filmmaking. If I am focused on a technical limitation of a film, like I can't move past that. And that's what ended up happening in a lot of the prequels where the CGI
the prequels
was just
had
totally
no great performances like these new ones do. These new ones, Adam
Ewan
Driver
McGregor
carries
was
it.
good.
Yeah, I mean, he's all right, but he has nothing to do.
No, not really.
Adam Driver carries these 3 new prequels.
Yes.
He's the best character.
Yeah, he's definitely the best character. Yeah.
He's well developed. I can't say the same about Finn. He started off really strong. A turned stormtrooper.
He's been pushed and pulled. That is a great concept.
That is a great concept, but his best arc was in The Force Awakens. He was fighting he learned to fight for the right thing in that movie. In the second movie, he's still trying to learn to fight for the right thing. In the third movie, I don't even know what he's doing in this one.
He's coming to grips with his force sensitivity.
I'm rolling my eyes.
It's valid. Those are valid. They're valid points, though. And let me clarify, because I don't want people to think I'm duking it out with the guest that has taken the time.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No one will ever be our guest ever again.
I know. I didn't want to do this.
No, I just want to make sure this is a good point. We're all so passionate about this world that's what connects us. Whether or not we like the same parts of the movie or whether or not we like the movie, all 3 of us have a passion for these films. So for me, that's what's encouraging about seeing these sometimes not well developed stories and sometimes not well developed characters, but there's a passion that we have for it. So for anybody who thinks that I'm fighting with Justin, that's not the point. The point is that we're just passionate about it and that you wanted something from this film that you didn't get, and that's valid. And I got something from this film that maybe a lot of people didn't get, and that's valid. And I think because we have a passion for it, that talking about the discrepancies or talking about the things that we like might sound like a conflict, but they're not. It's because we just love this world and we want this world. You want this world to work for you. And unfortunately, Rise of Skywalker didn't. So it's kind of tainted. Like you said, you don't really want to deal with the world anymore. And I think that's interesting because I think I'm done with it on some level for the opposite reason, because I felt, now call me on the 3rd or 4th watch, I felt fulfilled at the end of this film. So I'm okay with it ending this 9-part saga. Whatever happens from this point on, I'll be all about it. But it's about passion. It's about a love for something that was created. So that can never be a bad thing, ever. Yeah.
And am I asking too much from a?
It's multi-layered. It's not a movie. It's a
sci-fi. It's a pop. But it's
also
cheesy...
not a movie from the mind of a creator. It's a movie that's a product of a company.
Yeah,
that
it's a business.
Yeah.
And I was telling Josh earlier today, for this one, I feel like, at the end of the day, it's always a business. It's always about making money. But this one, it just really. It felt like the illusion was broken somehow, and it showed Star Wars for what it really is. It's out to please the most people that it can, and like wrap everything up and kind of draw this out. It made me question why we even have these 3, new sequels to begin with. Like, what? Was anybody asking for an end? We got an end to Han Solo's story and Leia and Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi. They were all living with the Ewoks, and they were chilling, and they were great. Why carry it on? If this was the end result, why even go down that road? Why not just come up with something new and super cool the same universe?
Yeah, the crazy part is that I think one big reason is because George Lucas said that he had 9 movies. And he wasn't even involved in the last 3.
He originally did say that.
But he wasn't.
He didn't even have 3 movies to begin with.
That's
He had
very
one.
true. He had one movie, and he
Right.
made that movie.
Right.
And then everybody said, "Make another movie."
And he said, "Oh well, I got."
He's like, "I can make 2 movies."
Yeah.
And they said, "Okay."
Right.
So that's a kind of a cynical way to end this, but I think
I'm sorry.
it's
sorry,
okay.
guys.
No, you know what?
I really appreciate you having me on, and I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to bring you down.
But at least we can look at Baby
Paul
Yoda.
and both of you have given me something to think about. Different views are always valued.
Well, hey, yeah, I mean
and I will see it again, and I will see everything that Star Wars does.
Well, let me just say this in ending. Once again, you shouldn't have to apologize about being passionate, whether or not it's positive or negative, about a film. You're passionate about this world, and it didn't live up to what you feel it should have, and that's valid. So there's no need to even say I apologize or anything like that. You didn't bring anything down. You actually put it into perspective. It's going to drive me crazy how the hell that lightsaber got put back together, because it never dawned on me, not one moment. So don't ever apologize for being passionate about something, because there is dark and light in this world, literally in this Star Wars world and in our world. So it's good to be passionate about something, whether or not it's a positive review or a negative review. So I appreciate your point of view. So thank you for being with us again, by the way.
Yeah.
I much appreciate it.
Yeah. And we didn't even get into it at the beginning, but how many more Emmys have you won since we talked to you?
Well, I have 10 total.
So he's got 10 total. We'd have to look back and
Yeah.
I guess see. So,
Yeah, so-
a bunch more. So there you go. A 10-time Emmy
That's
Award winner. I should have led with that, I guess. But.
Yeah, I was telling him last week, Justin, that I wanted to say, "Oh, welcome to the Actor and the Engineer," or "This is Emmy Award winner Josh Knapp," and he was like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." And then he says, "We need to get you to win an Emmy somehow." And I was like, "From your lips to God's ears, dude. Whatever you want to say, I'll be fine with that." But I didn't know that you've won a couple more since the last time that we spoken.
Yeah. And I got to
good for
go
you.
to Nashville.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I got to go to Nashville and accept them. And I won 2 more last year. And so it brought me to 10.
I think it's after you win 6 Emmys that you can deem an Emmy to another person.
It's like a knighthood.
And then you can give it to them.
Really?
Yes.
And then that way you have 4 extras. You can give me one.
I
and we
can give you
all be Emmy
3.
Award
I'll give you
winners.
3.
And,
Sure. I'll give Josh 1.
That's
right.
I did look on the bottom of my Emmy, and it says that like you can't give this to anybody. Like it was very specific. But I did hear about, like, I guess in the olden days, like Marlon Brando sold his Oscar or something.
Yeah.
And there's a whole, like, somebody had the Citizen Kane
Or found him in
Orson
the
Welles
trash or
Oscar.
something. Yeah.
But I guess you can't do that.
No, you don't own your Oscar. You won your Oscar, but the actual statue belongs to the Academy.
So you're just borrowing
So you're
it.
no longer allowed
Wow.
to sell it or pawn it or whatever. Yeah, it's not your property.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the 2 of you, because this is now like episode 250 something.
Yeah, 253.
Yeah, that's incredible. And but you guys do a really, really nice job, because I've been binging on your episodes lately. And I wish I could be here more often, because you guys just got a real nice way of you got a nice rapport with each other, and it also mirrors a lot of my opinions. I don't just watch Star Wars, believe it or not. Like,
We may have to have you on for another movie that's not Star Wars.
I kind of would like that, because I don't want to invite myself back, but I want to redeem myself somehow and show you that I do have opinions. Good, not just completely cynical opinions on movies, but no, you guys do an awesome job. I love listening to it. I am in the middle of your 200th episode right now. Like, I was listening to it in the car on the way here tonight. And your top 10 movies, and you guys got good taste, and keep it up. It's awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's awesome. You know what's scary?
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. You know what's scary is that I think for at least one of us, maybe both of us, that top 10 may change after this year.
Because of Rise of Skywalker is going to
That's
make your
right.
top 10.
No. But I think I might have a movie that's going to reach into my top 10.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah. I've got to see it a couple more times, but
You've already seen it like 3.
I've seen it twice, but
Okay.
yeah. So we'll keep people guessing because we do have hopefully maybe if they've listened, they don't have to guess. But yeah, we've got our top 10 movies of 2019 coming up, but we still have so many movies to see. So, or at least I do.
Did you do like a decade top? Like
We haven't done a decade. We've not been around for that long. We've done it for 5+ years now. 5+ years now.
Well, I
so.
mean, like what your favorite movies of the decade were. Like
We haven't
2000.
we haven't done that. Yeah. So I don't know. We could talk about that. But all right. Well, we'll see you next week.
May the force be with us all.
May the force be with us all. Get the eye raise.
I'm not saying it.